All right, so a lot to unpack tonight, and joining us to help do that is political analyst Keith Leslie. Keith, why didn't the government introduce any new measures to help with affordability? That's the big question.
Well, the one thing they point to, of course, is the 6-month extension, the 10-cent per liter cut in the gas tax, which the Premier announced earlier this week. That's the only affordability measure really in this statement. The high inflation and soaring interest rates that are hurting all of us are also hurting the government's finances. So I think at this point, they really just can't afford to give direct help to taxpayers who are, struggling mightily, especially at the grocery store and at the gas pumps. The government is also struggling with its finances, which are down $2.5 billion this year alone.
Let's talk about the projected deficit this year, which has more than quadrupled. How will this affect Ontarians?
Well, of course, the deficit just adds to the debt. And the debt now, we're paying interest, $13.4 billion this year in interest, and in 2 years, that's going to be $15.2 billion a year in interest. That's money that's not being spent to try and meet the housing starts goal, to improve healthcare, education, social services, all those other things. That money, fourth largest thing in the budget is interest payment, and that's because the government keeps running deficits. And this government is going to continue to increase spending.
It's a staggering number. Okay, so as we heard, Ontario is proposing to launch its own infrastructure bank with an initial $3 billion in public funding. How exactly will that work?
Well, it's not really clear. I mean, the government says it's going to create this arm's length agency. And as Al Sweeney reported, the opposition parties are quite skeptical at this point about it being stacked with, PC supporters and developers even. The government says taxpayers simply can't afford to keep building what's needed, especially in infrastructure projects. So it wants to use this $3 billion in seed money in this new bank to attract institutional investors, pension funds and others to invest in roads, highways, hospitals, long-term care homes, and even affordable housing, which up till date, developers have not been willing to build, certainly not in the last 15 or 20 years. So how this is going to work, very unclear at this point. The government says there's more details to come, but as I say, the opposition parties are very skeptical about the whole plan.
Yeah, a lot of question marks there. Now, the government says it is still committed to balancing the books with a small surplus in 2025-26. Do you think that's likely to happen?
Oh, I think they can actually get there, especially that year, which is going to be an election year, and especially given the fact they now have $5.7 billion contingency fund. That ought to make sure they can balance the budget in 2 years from now.
All right. Thank you so much, Keith. That's political analyst Keith Leslie.